This public hearing for the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. Today's public hearing is convened under the provisions of the Local Government Act of British Columbia to hear submissions relative to the proposed bylaw. All persons who believe their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard respecting matters in the proposed bylaw. I would ask those members of the public who wish to speak to commence your address to this board by clearly stating your name. The board will not debate the matters of a proposed bylaw with individual citizens, but members may ask questions of you following your presentation. The main function of this public hearing is to listen to your views. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making their views heard. We will only have one public hearing as bylaw number 2834 has, at the request of the proponent, the public hearing is being canceled. So this is bylaw number 2822, which would enable traveler accommodation use. Oh, sorry. This is the one that's being canceled. I apologize to everyone. Bylaw number 2822, the hearing on this has been canceled at the request of the proponent. We move on to bylaw number 2834, which would rezone 2037 Martin Prairie Road in Pritchard from RL1 rural zone to SH1 small holding zone to facilitate a subdivision of one proposed and one remainder parcel. Mr. Corporate Officer, are there any written submissions?
Thank you, Chair Roden. There was a written submission received prior to deadline, and that was attached to the agenda, which was republished for the board and the public to read.
Thank you. Are there any in-person submissions? Either here in the room or on Zoom? No one wishing to speak. I'm going to call a second time for representations. Is there anyone who wishes to speak to this? I'm going to call a third and final time for any submissions. All right, there being no further speakers, I declare this public hearing closed. And we move seamlessly into the regular board meeting of the Thompson-Nicola Regional District for Thursday, January 18th, 2024. I think the statute of limitations on wishing people Happy New Year has not yet run out, so Happy New Year to everyone. That's the last one. The statute has now ended. The TNRD acknowledges we connect with many First Nations communities across our vast regional district, and today we are located on the Tecumloops to Secwepemc territory, situated within the unceded ancestral lands of the Secwepemc Nation. The TNRD appreciates the partnership that we have with Tecumloops to Secwepemc and respects the territory and land on which we gather today. Welcome to Alternate Director Dallas Brandt, who will be attending our meetings today and tomorrow on behalf of Director Herb Graham. A couple of library announcements with visual aids. In honor of Braille Literacy Month, the library is proud to announce its newest offering, children's Braille books. I'm going to pass around two, which is more provided. We have The Rooster Who Would Not Be Quiet, and we have How to Catch a Star. So you circulate, these are two of the items that are going to be available through the TNRL. This is just one more way of breaking down barriers for persons with visual impairment, and we are confident that this collection will receive good use as the word spreads, and the Braille books are being circulated for information, so you can see what they look and feel like. Additionally, beginning this week through to mid-March, the library is pleased to welcome third-year TRU nursing practicum students. The students will become library community navigators, connecting patrons to support and resources in the community through one-on-one and group programs, and plan and facilitate a seniors wellness clinic at the North Kamloops Library. This initiative builds on prior work done by community support worker interns and practicum students from the Human Services Diploma Program at Thompson Rivers University. City of Kamloops, we have courtesy parking passes for all directors with the exception of those from the City of Kamloops. If you have not already done so, please pick up your City of Kamloops courtesy parking pass at reception. These courtesy passes allow you to park on city streets or in city-owned parking lots and should only be used when on TNRD business. They do not allow you to park on lots that are managed by private companies like Indigo or Imperial, etc. Only one pass per director will be issued. As we all know, it was too darn cold over the past week or so. And so we want to recognize the efforts of TNRD staff and contractors who did not stop work during the recent cold snap. Special shout out to the site attendants, truck drivers, landfill operators, and TNRD support staff keeping eco depots and landfills open. Special shout out to the utility services staff and contractors who kept the water flowing in all of the TNRD systems, which required extra attention and time in frigid temperatures in the Black Pines water system where the intake froze up. And to our firefighters throughout the region who are prepared to respond to calls regardless of the temperature. At one of the coldest points during last week, the Blackpool Fire Department supported a helicopter medevac, which required them to be outside securing the landing pad, supporting the helicopter landing and takeoff, and assisting BC ambulance staff as needed. Insert chairs update here highlighted. I'd like to invite you all to Ashcroft on the 27th of January for the 4th annual Guns and Hoses charity hockey match. This fun event, which has been won twice by the fire hoses team and once by the guns, goes to benefit a local nonprofit or community organization. It has benefited the Honor Ranch. It's benefited the Village of Lytton in the past. This year or Lytton Fire Department, sorry. This year it benefits the Ashcroft and District Hospice Society, which for 35 years has been providing hospice support and palliative care support to people from Clinton down to Lytton and Spence's Bridge, Ashcroft, Cache Creek, Area I, Area E, and Area J. And it's going to be a fun evening on the 27th of January with firefighters, first responders, police officers, law enforcement from all around the region, giving it their best with a few fun surprises on ice. Let's just say there will be hijinks. So please come on out and support this great event, which supports the Ashcroft and District Hospice Society. Upcoming meetings, Friday, January 19th, tomorrow, for those of you keeping track, 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a committee of the whole meeting. Tomorrow at 1:30, we have a policy and governance committee meeting. Wednesday, February 15th, finance committee meets. Also on Wednesday, February 15th, right? Wednesday the 15th? Wednesday for a regular board meeting? Thursday, okay. Don't believe what it says here. Do not come on Wednesday the 15th. You will be disappointed, or maybe not, I don't know. Come on Thursday the 15th at 10 o'clock in the morning for Finance Committee, and on Thursday the 15th at 1:30 for the regular board meeting. And on Friday, February 16th, so that's correct, 9 o'clock, we have a committee of the whole meeting. Information related today to the delegation from Kamloops White Cane Club is in your blue folders, as is any regular mail addressed to you. All right, additions to or deletions from the agenda. We have item 7.2 regarding bylaw number 2822. The temporary use permit 68 is being deleted at the request of the proponent. We are deleting item 12.1.7, which regards Gold Country Community Society. The supporting documents were not attached to any version of the agenda, which I have seen. And so we felt, in fairness, to give directors enough time to fully digest the supporting documents. That will be on the next agenda. This will repeal the existing funding arrangement with Gold Country Community Society, which is not budgeted for in 2024. Gold Country is working on another different funding model, which does not include the TNRD having a policy or a bylaw. So just in answer to questions, Gold Country, TNRD's financial arrangement with Gold Country is ending and the society is pursuing different funding options. That will be on the next agenda. We are adding item 14.2, which is regarding the Equality Project in Cache Creek. You should have received information via email. So could I please have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Director Stamer, thank you. Vice Chair Smith. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, just got a notice from Mayor Hamer Jackson. We're going to have any video at all with our directors, or are we just going to be using our hand features for speaking? Because I just asked him to check it out and he said it was working. So what are we doing on that? There seems to be an awful lot of people on there, so there may not be that opportunity, but as long as that's working, he's just trying it again.
Can you hear me?
So to answer the question, will raising his hand through the Zoom link would be the best way to participate? Is that the question?
We can see you and hear you, Director Hamer Jackson. And if you want to ask a question or have a comment, just raise your hand and I'll get one of my spotters to keep an eye open for you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have the minutes of the regular board meeting held on December 14th.
Move the minutes.
Vice Chair Smith, Director Sarai second. Are there any errors or omissions or deletions? Seeing none on the question, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. We have bylaws from public hearings, 7.1 zoning amendment bylaw number 2834, 2023. And we do have a staff recommendation.
Move one.
Director Stamer, thank you very much. Director Thorpe, second. Discussion. Any further discussion on this item? All right, on the question, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. And we have a second recommendation. Director Ranta, second by Director Rain. Discussion. All right, on the motion that this be adopted, all those in favor, opposed if any, that is carried. Item 7.2 has been deleted. We move on to delegations and invited presentations. This is very exciting. We are used to seeing some groups present many times as delegations over the years. And we are welcoming the Kamloops White Cane Club for the very first time in their 30-year existence. So welcome to the TNRD and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an incredible opportunity to present on a regular board meeting to the TNRD, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. Over the past 30 years, our White Cane Club has been very active within the community of educating, promoting education and raising awareness about blindness within the community. So with that, as I say, my name is Vern Short. I'm a vice president of the White Cane Club. Today I have Linda Hall, who is the president of the White Cane Club, and her husband is the treasurer who keeps all track of the pennies and nickels. Well, no more pennies, but nickels and dimes. So thank you very much for this opportunity. It is my intention to inform you, to inspire you, and to involve you with this presentation. Today, across Canada, there are roughly 1.5 million Canadians living with vision loss, with significant vision loss and that is even with corrective lenses. In BC, there are 252,000 residents living with significant vision loss. And of course, we know that vision loss, blindness, eye injuries are occurring every day, every month, and every year. So again, I thank you for this opportunity to promote education and awareness about blindness. White Cane Week is celebrated during the first full week in February, Sunday through Saturday, February 4th to the 10th of 2024. So today I do this presentation on behalf of the Kamloops White Cane Club, which has celebrated in October of 2023, we celebrated 30 years in the community, which to me is a significant milestone. Why is the White Cane so important? Why is White Cane Week so important? This week provides an opportunity for groups and clubs of blind members to promote education and raise awareness in the community. The Canadian Council of the Blind, the acronym I use also is CCB, Canadian Council of the Blind. The Canadian Council of the Blind was founded in 1944. The CCB recognized a real need to create and develop programs to promote education and raise awareness about blindness in the community. The contributing factor was our returning soldiers from World War II with severe eye injuries and blindness. As a result, in 1946, White Cane Week was started. Today, White Cane Week is celebrated across Canada. As I had mentioned, the first full week in February, Sunday through Saturday. Please bear with me, for my cue cards are a little larger than what you're used to. I understand I have 10 minutes. Is that correct? So the white cane was adopted officially by Lions clubs in Canada in 1928. Is there anyone here in a Lions club? Sorry, I can't see.
Director Stamer from Barrier and Director Stanky from Clinton.
Thank you very much. Then you would recognize the phrase Knights of the Blind. So in Lions history, in their history, club history, they became the Knights of the Blind, in which they would help with financial matters or helping them with whatever other needs that was within reason, for helping with guide dogs, for instance. My friend Linda here has had 3 dogs. Yeah. The white cane has not only become a tool for the blind, but also a symbol of courage and independence. And let me tell you, the white cane, and certainly has given back my independence, and Linda would also attest that the white cane certainly provided independence for her mobility as well. So the acronym CCB, of course, is the Canadian Council of the Blind, the voice of the blind. And this year is a significant year, as I say. The Canadian Council of the Blind was founded in 1944. Thus, this year marks 80 years, which is rather significant. Now, the CNIB, the difference, I'm going to mark the difference between CNIB and the CCB. The CNIB, which has been around since 1918, which, how's your math? Is that 106 years? The CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind, is a service provider for its clients. That means that on their online shopping store or their store, they have low and high tech items that they can sell you, from hand magnifiers to CCT closed circuit TVs, which I use at home as well. And it can magnify up to 400 times. Now, these magnifiers, for the average person, they're cost prohibitive. They start at $3,500 to $6,000. Like anything else in medical field, they are expensive. But those tools are out there to help the blind. So again, I say CNIB has been around since 1918. And CNIB also has the most comprehensive library for the blind and visually impaired. And I'm only too happy to hear that with the TNRD library and other library systems within Canada, that it has formed a partnership with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind Library called NELS. One other significant item I'd like to bring up is that January 4th of this year, we observed World Braille Day. Now, Linda reads only by Braille. So how many years, Linda, have you been reading by Braille? Yeah, 40 years was her answer or response. And so from what I understand, there's about 1% of those that are blind or partially blind that use Braille, and it is making a comeback, as Judy had stated previously to you. We're so very pleased to see Braille options and Braille items for children and adults. So does anyone, or sorry, does everyone know the story of Braille? So this year we're marking or observing World Braille Day, 200th anniversary of Braille. 1824, Braille was created by Louis Braille, a 15-year-old student that was attending a blind school in Paris. Now, the French Signal Corps had come into the school feeling that were bringing an option or help to the blind students to help read. And what they brought in was raised alphabet for the students to read. Well, Louis Braille turned that around and studied it and created today what is Braille, and created 6 little amazing dots to help the Braille read. And as I say, Braille has been around for 200 years. I don't really have too much more to say. Is there any, I've passed 2 different types of canes around. You're probably used to seeing the one longer, more standard cane. The smaller cane that Amanda is holding is my cane for those that are visually impaired, whereas the longer cane that Linda might have been using, or others that are with much lower vision. The standard cane is a much taller cane itself. Now, when I had mentioned 252,000 British Columbia residents living with significant vision, that's significant vision with corrective lenses. Just think about that for a minute. Even someone with wearing glasses, their vision is not corrected. For instance, Linda is totally blind, and I was diagnosed or designated as legally blind. The glasses do not really provide much help for me. As I say, I read font that's about 24, whereas your regular font in a newspaper is about 11 or 12. But my ears are I've trained my ears to be very keen in recognizing voices and paying attention to meetings as well. So not only do I represent the Kamloops White Cane Club, I am a director and public relations director for the BC Yukon Division of the Canadian Council of the Blind. And I am also a member of the TNRD Accessibility Advisory Committee. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Short. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I've got Director Houghton, Director Blackwell, Director Middleton. Director Houghton?
I'll make this quick. I sold John Deere farm equipment for 40 years. It's down the road in Dallas, and sold it all types, all sizes to all types of people. But on a Saturday afternoon, this gentleman brought his father in. I think Jill Hayward and Ward Staberl know who I'm talking about. Brought their father in to buy a new John Deere lawnmower. He said, Doug, I'll just warn you, my dad is totally blind. And I said, well, how can he make out cutting a lawn in John Deere lawnmower? I still don't know how he did it, but he's taken that lawnmower home and cuts his own lawn all the time. That's Mr. Tremblay from Barrier. And I said to myself, that's one of the most unique sales I've ever had in my career. And I give hats off to that gentleman. And he had a sense of humor till the cows come home. He had more fun out in the parking lot driving that John Deere than I did, probably taking it to town one day. But hats off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Blackwell.
Yes, thank you, Vern, for your presentation and your participation on the Accessibility Committee. Because of people like you, I noticed things like the audio signals were not working outside on our intersection this morning. And it's that constant feedback that you have to check everything twice. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. You can be sure that I will be giving you feedback on the audible pedestrian signals. For many years, I sat on the city's traffic division for audible pedestrian signals, and it's a great a move forward, not only for those that are visually impaired or blind, but for our children attending school or our children within the community. And also to have our local transit system to have audible bus stops. That's a tremendous help. I also forgot to mention that Linda and myself were blind curlers, blind lawn bowlers, and today we also, on a weekly basis, we go 5-pin bowling. And some of us hit 200 games. Some, Linda's even had a turkey. 3 strikes in a row, that's not bad. But the saying goes, we participate in society, we just do things a little differently. Any other comments or questions?
Director Middleton?
Thank you. And just for the record, I got badly beat last year in the bowling challenge. So kudos to the White Cane Club with their bowling, and it was a lot of fun. Hoping to do it again this year. I think it's coming up here fairly soon, is it not?
Yes, the date has been changed. Instead of the February 9th, usually it's been changed to February 6th,
Okay,
16th, pardon me,
16th. Okay, thank you. Just for an update on
from
that.
11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And if there's any director from TNRD that wishes to come out, it's out at the Falkland bowling lanes in Valley View. And the White Cane Club will be paying for your shoes and 2 bowling games. So come out if you dare.
Could I, just a supplementary and just a quick ask on donations, when an individual donates through the national program, how much of that, those funds might actually filter their way back into the Kamloops White Cane Club? Or is there a way to donate purposefully to the Kamloops branch of the White Cane Club?
Well, it's up to each individual chapter within BC. And I believe there's 27 chapters in BC, and it's up to their own chapter to realize their own funding and donations. Kamloops White Cane Club is very fortunate to derive funding from a couple of community nonprofit groups. We still earn the money, but they're very good in donating money each year for us to help provide education and raise awareness and go out and challenge sighted groups with our 5-pin bowling. We promise we won't hurt you this year. In fact, I was telling Marnie Jeremiah, Marnie, where are you? Oh, see, you're learning. Over here or over there does not help anybody that is blind. We don't mind laughing at ourselves or with other people, But it's important to say, well, over here to your right or over here to your left. And like I was telling Marnie this morning, Marnie, I even got my hair cut and I shaved for you. So without further ado, I do want to extend my thanks for this opportunity to come before you on a regular board meeting. I do hope I've informed you, inspired you, and involved you in White Cane Week in acknowledging those that are blind and partially blind, as well as deaf blind. As I've mentioned, 1.5 million Canadians, 250,000 British Columbians, and roughly 800 plus Kamloopians live with significant vision loss. And this is one thing that doesn't seem to go down each week, each month, each year. There's an increase of an individual losing their vision. And I think my time is up, Madam Chair.
Just about, I see that Director Hamer Jackson online has his hand up. So just a moment, Director Hamer Jackson, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to say that I bowled with Linda and actually I've got two good eyes and Linda beat me not just in one game, but I believe every game of bowling. She's got a really good tool to bowl with. I don't know if it's legal or not, but I guess my question is to Vern, what's the number one thing that that the board can do for you or for your organization moving forward?
Well, I would say the number one thing is to help promote education and raise awareness about blindness within the community, and not just Kamloops, but all other TNRD affiliated communities. Now, there may be 10 people in Ashcroft. There may be 15 people within Clearwater. Those communities that have audio pedestrian signals, that's a great help. Think about your signage. Black on white is the best contrast for someone that's partially sighted. Your signs for washrooms, if they're digital or done in large print. Yellow lines in the communities, those that are partially sighted, the yellow lines are great, a great tool for depth perception and even on your handrails. You'd be amazed at it. So going forward, it's about thinking about persons with disabilities, not just the blind or visually impaired, but all others. I once heard that if you build it, they will come. Does that make sense to you? Again, you can't see my knees shaking from here, but I'm willing to leave the podium anytime you want. But this is a subject near and dear to my heart. And if I've left an impact on you, a positive impact, it's this, that our community of blind and visually impaired want to participate in society as well. And we like doing things, we just may do things differently than the sighted. So thank you very much again. And certainly by all means, I'll come back here next year if you will have me. By all means.
Well, thank you very much. I hope it's not 30 years before you come back. So
Yeah.
please come back sooner than that.
Madam Chair, I do not have 30 years.
Well, then you'll have to make it sooner. There's your reason.
Thank you
So
very much.
Thank you very much. All right, we have a second delegation from the South Cariboo Sportsmen Association. We have President Wayne Warnock and Vice President Bill Forsyth to present to the board. Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing us to meet and present with this board. And the purpose of this presentation was to respond to comments and information made by the TIMIC group December 14th. I've included a slide presentation. Is that available? And I know I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to talk real fast, you guys.
Just for
Next.
clarification, are you intending to present the slideshow that you had
Yes.
sent on to us?
Yes.
All right.
So
Just a word of warning, we cannot get into a he said, she said. We are at a very, very early stage. The TNRD Board of Directors must be very, very careful that we follow our procedures, that we are seen to maintain a fair and equitable treatment of everyone, and that we cannot be seen to be taking sides or showing partiality. So the last thing we want to do is start getting into a he said, she said, that was wrong, that was misleading, because we have no way of proving or disproving those facts, and we are at far too early a stage to even be considering that. So just,
I understand. And from what you've read, I changed my presentation since you've read that. So hopefully we're both good to go. Can I have the next slide? So our goal today was to clarify information which was presented over the 2 weeks. So this is a view of our range looking downwards, and the purpose of the picture is just to show that there's no disturbance of this site, nor has there been for previous waste or landfill as stated by TIMIC. The next slide shows a view from down below the bottom edge of our lease property. And again, it's an area, TIMIC stated is an area used for landfill. And as you can all see, it's not been used for a landfill. What is TIMIC really proposing? In April, they proposed a potting soil composting center for 20,000 tons per year. And then they presented 240,000 tons of landfill, which got reduced down to 190,000 tons of landfill. And that can vary, of course, 50,000 to a maximum of 190,000, but 250,000 automatically triggers that as a reviewable project. However, at 190,000, it eliminated the notification process to all the various groups involved. So the next slide is a simple letter from the Chief Administration Officer from the village of Cache Creek that shows the lower portion, which was the old transfer station site. That portion of land, 8.28 hectares, is actually on title and owned by the village of Cache Creek. So that's included in what the TIMIC group is looking to include in their process. And the next page is a map showing that Cache Creek area, also adjacent to the airport, and the zoning is for an airport. So it doesn't have a landfill or any other zoning because it's attached to the airport. The next slide is Transport Canada, Section 3.2, hazardous land use acceptability. Primary hazard zones generally enclose airspace in which aircraft are at or below altitudes of 1,500 feet above ground level. These altitudes are mostly populated by birds, at which collisions with birds have potential risk of the greatest amount of damage. So high risk is putrescible waste landfills. Moderate risk is open to partially enclosed waste transfer stations, and low risk is dry waste landfills, enclosed waste transfer facility, wet dry recycling facility. None of the above are allowed in close proximity to an airport under 1,500 feet above ground. And this transfer station site owned by Cache Creek is less than 400 meters from the airport. So the only question I wanted to make the council aware is, has Timic made application to Transport Canada for their project?
Okay, point of order here. I'm just going to stop you, Mr. Warnock. This is the presentation which I had been told you were not going to be making because it is a he said, she said. I had hoped instead that you would be presenting about the South Caribou Sportsmen Association and the property that you own there and why it is important to you and to club members and to the surrounding area. As I said before you began speaking, we are at far too early a stage for this sort of detail or discussion.
Mhm.
So we really can't, we cannot debate any of this. We
Well,
also cannot assess its validity. So I think you would be better served using your remaining time just to introduce yourself to the members of this board who are not familiar with South Caribou Sportsmen Association and where you are located and the services that you provide and how that will be impacted by this going ahead.
okay, thank you, Chairman. I will do that. So South Caribou Sportsmen's Association is a nonprofit society that's been in business since 1984 at the location shown on the map. We offer sporting services to communities not only of Ashcroft and Cache Creek, but 7 surrounding communities: Clinton, Savinaw, Logan Lake, Spence's Bridge, Lytton. The club has a total membership of 300 members on average. We're all volunteers. Nobody is paid any type of a salary. And the facility that Timic has proposed would essentially take over our property that we've operated on since 1984. So all that we've been trying to do is propose is put out our position that if their proposal were to proceed, it eliminates our sporting club, takes over our property, and we've put in hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements into that land with roadways, infrastructure, an 800-meter power line that we paid for, private power line, a clubhouse building, and several firearm shooting buildings and archery sites. So I just, again, wanted to make the council aware of who we are and I guess what we stand to lose if this proposal is approved.
And just for clarification, what sort of size property would you be needing for all the things that have gone, for those of us who are not sportsmen? What size of property would you be looking at needing for a facility such as the one you have right now?
In other words, if we were to move elsewhere, is that the question? What we proposed to the proponents was a private property that would be about 1,000 meters by 1,000 meters square. It could be larger, but somewhere's in that vicinity.
Are there any questions? Director Getz, I believe you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I could, since I'm not from this area and this has not a lot to do with me, I would like to know if I could get this slide deck sent to me so I could judge it for myself because I remember when the last group was in, we got a fairly detailed situation. So I'd like to be able to see this on my own if I could, please. If I could have it mailed to me, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have no problem with TNRD emailing that to any of the directors here.
So anyone who'd like to see it, if you could let Mr. Lois know, who would be the best person? Okay, yeah, let Mr. Lois know and he will forward you the slide deck. Are there any other questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you for allowing me to present.
All right, we move on to bylaws. 10.1 zoning amendment bylaw number 2826, 2023, application number BA 250. We have a recommendation. All right, Director Oswald, seconded by Director Stankey. Discussion. Seeing no hands in the air, and for Directors Hamer, Jackson, and Lepso, who are with us via Zoom, under our procedure bylaw, we need you to vote verbally and for the chair to confirm. So I'll just ask when I call for the votes, if you could just yay or nay, that would be great. So all those in favor? Director Hamer, Jackson?
Yay.
Thank you. Director Lepso?
Yay.
Thank you very much. All those opposed? Director Smith? You're in favor. Okay. That was a late in favor. Anyone, is anyone opposed? All right, that is carried. Item number 11.1, development variance permit DVP 119, Green Lake Road, Green Lake South Road. We have a recommendation.
Move the recommendation.
Director Sarai, seconded by Director Blackwell. Discussion? On the question, Director Hamer Jackson,
Yay.
Director Lepso,
Yay.
everyone else? And anyone opposed? That is carried. Thank you. All right, we move on to reports. We have a verbal report from CAO Hildebrand.
Yay. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I have a few updates I'd like to share with you today. As requested, you should have also received a more detailed email from me, just highlighting a few of the details that I'll be speaking to, just to help with perhaps questions at the end. So please feel free to ask those once I complete 4 topics. Firstly, our 2024 budget. The final budget will come back for adoption on March 21st of 2024. Slight adjustments to the budget are still being made, but minor in nature. Any adjustments in most cases are also being offset in other areas. Any adjustments of material value will be shared and justified prior to adoption, and so we will certainly bring a final report if anything like that does come up. Please note that the utilities and the decisions made in the recent committee will be adjusted as well according to the budget, so more information to come there. We have received new assessment data, and this will be incorporated into the report in the budget. And from what I'm seeing, average assessment appears to be declining across the TNRD in most cases, but there's certainly some ups and downs there. These changes in assessment don't impact our overall taxation need, but may shift allocation of taxation amongst municipalities and electoral area directors. Our communication team will continue to provide information, updates, and education, and to our taxpayers through the next few months. We've made some huge strides to provide thorough yet easy to consume budget information. This has required a lot of staff time, but I know this is important to our residents. The public can go to tnrd.ca/budget 2024 to find lots of that information. If you go to the TNRD website homepage, there's also a quick link on the front page to get to this information, as well as our social media feeds. The web page highlights the global tax requisition, operating costs, capital costs, explaining changes in each of those sections. There's also links to key reports and recordings from public meetings in recent months. There's plenty of infographic material. For example, the tax rate by service infographics for each municipality and EA as well. So please take a look at that if you would like to get more information. Finally, there's also a feedback and question form embedded into the webpage. So if residents do have questions, they can certainly fill that out and send that in to us. Finally, there's a lot of feedback and questions from, as that information comes through, we would certainly share that with the board and make sure that that comes back for the final meeting. We did a news release in November to let people know about all this information and encourage people to participate. We shared this information on the regional newsletter recently as well, which reaches approximately 15,000 rural residents or addresses. We also did a news release earlier this month to talk about our capital plan. And just like last year, we'll be aiming to do a news release in March to ensure that our residents and the board information is shared across our region. Secondly, I'd like to talk about a few comments about our board's strategic plan. Staff continue to work against the board's strategic plan that was adopted nearly a year ago. Staff are now working on a more specific operational plan for allocation of staffing and resources with respect to the execution behind the strategic plan. This is expected to be complete sometime in March, and it certainly will be shared when complete. The staff operational plan will highlight our 2024 goals and priorities and how staff and resources are being managed, allowing us to be better balanced with our workload. It is my intention to provide the board with status updates throughout the year. So 2 to 3 times a year, you'll be getting an update on the strategic plan. And it's also my intention to have a tracker on our website so that we can easily understand the progress and the accomplishments that we've been making. We're going to try to make it as simple as we can with possibly a traffic light type thing where it's red, green, or yellow based on progress and status. So that information will be coming also in the very near future. Thirdly, a staffing and resource update for the board. We are currently in search of a new executive assistant for the board, as well as a grants coordinator to replace Ms. McMillan. She is moving to the Fire Smart role. Both of these positions are closely connected to the board, and as they perform many tasks around travel, coordination of meetings, expenses, and communication, as well as discretionary and grant funding. Interviews have commenced already. We are working closer to kind of wean it down to the final candidates so we can make a decision, but there's still going to be a time of transition. So I would ask the board for your patience as we transition these new employees into these critical positions. Thank gosh we have Agnes around because she's certainly helping us out. So we appreciate that. There may be delays, but we will do our best to stay on top of things. And I'm very grateful for both Kim and Agnes for their help and support during this transition. Another comment, attracting quality talent continues to be a huge struggle across the organization. And I think we're certainly not alone amongst local governments. We are being creative and trying to find different ways to find candidates, but the market continues to be very competitive. We have a handful of entry-level administrative positions opening soon due to some of this internal movement and promotion. So I'm even reaching out to the board. If you know somebody that's interested in a fun and challenging career, they can certainly look us up online, and we would appreciate the referral. And then finally, I would like to share a few thoughts on the Premier's Task Force that have been involved with now since October. The Premier's Task Force continues to be extremely busy with many additional meetings being held over the last few months of our mandate. Most recent meetings were on January 11th and 12th, with another meeting coming up next week on the 25th that Premier Eby will also be joining us on, which will be interesting to get a perspective. The task force will continue to meet regularly in these next few months ahead and provide action-oriented recommendation. The conversations and overall general feedback has been very well received and aligned. We are being heard. I think that's the biggest, my message I'm bringing forward is we are being heard based on our regional district and EOC recommendations, and other organizations are certainly participating. Change and implementation of recommendations are ongoing process within the task force and associated ministry. And to share kind of in a bit more detail, the recommendations that we're talking about and that we're bringing forward to the province are actually happening in real time. So as those recommendations and thoughts are coming forward and people are agreeing on them, they're actually being actioned by the province within ministries to ensure we can implement as much as we can in advance of the 2024 season. We are also prioritizing items that may require more work for longer term benefit as well. So overall, I am very impressed with the process and the urgency behind the change. An emergency support services survey was just recently sent out as well. So I would really encourage the board and our residents to take part in that and participate in sharing your experiences. Industry and other engagement sessions continue to happen with the task force members. The feedback and sharing of information has been outstanding. The information and perspectives we are hearing will allow us to continue to build on those action-oriented recommendations. And just as a few examples, some of the groups that we've been meeting with of late, the forest industry and licensees, Loggers Association, Wildlife Council, First Nations and RDs and municipalities, tourism and economic development groups, BC Ag and Dairy, Invasive Species Council. I have had the privilege recently of meeting with the CSRD, with Interior Logging and with the BC Cattlemen Association. And there's 70 more engagements happening over the next 6 weeks to just ensure we are getting the right information and allowing us to include those comments in our recommendations. We expect to wrap up the task force by March 1st. Again, I've been very impressed with the team and the preparation and just the changes that we are hoping to make happen, and more information will be coming in the very near future as press releases and details will be shared publicly. So that's what I had today. If there's any questions you may have, I would gladly try to answer them.
Thank you, Director Stamer, Director Getz, Director Houghton, Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Back to the task force, Mr. Hildebrandt, is March the 1st, is that the end date for those submissions? Because I just got notification today that the meeting that we had originally scheduled for January 23rd for TNRD, Squalex First Nations, Adams Lake Indian Band, Tecumseh to Secwepemc, and District of Barrier has been postponed to facilitate broader task force member participation.
So thank you for the question. And yes, I was part of that decision to ensure that we could include a large representation of the TNRD board for that specific meeting. And I also wanted to participate. So that might have been postponed. But what I meant by March 1st is that that's when the task force comes to an end as a formal group. Work will continue because there's certainly lots to do.
And as if I may supplement, any chance that we can have that meeting a little bit longer? I mean, 2 hours doesn't seem like an awful long time for the amount of people that are going to be on this meeting.
So that's, thank you for the question. I will certainly pass that along, but I know that's been the kind of the standard 2 hours for every group. And that's why we're trying to pare it down to, instead of having 27 members on there, trying to provide, for example, for the TNRD, trying to find directors that were impacted last year that would have really recent information and experience. So we're trying to do our best there. So I think I've come up with 9 or 10 board members that I think would be a great addition. So maybe those meetings could be more efficient.
Thank you, Director Getz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also a question on the task force March 1st wrap up. Is this a task force that will be assembled at the end of every year? Or is this just a one and done? I'm just wondering. And the reason that I'm wondering is when our EMC person starts full time, would it be an idea for them to be at least introduced, or that this task force is aware that our community has a full-time EMC that they could touch on the shoulder if they had to? Or is this just a one and done thing? I'm just curious.
Yes, thank you for the question. From my understanding, this is ending as it's currently in place. But we have talked as a group about how important it is to continue this conversation. So how that's determined going forward, I don't have any knowledge on, but I certainly feel like there's a lot of interest around that table to make sure we follow through on some of these things and pull us together, or anybody else if necessary. Yeah, you're welcome.
Director Houghton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, CEO Hildebrandt, on behalf of the board, thank you for your great contribution into the task force. I think we're very honored as a community, a regional district, to have you on there at the Premier's request. And you've brought a lot of lightful stuff to us, and sounds like we're going to have a lot more coming down the pipe. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Houghton. I appreciate that, but I know that the information that I've received from the board, every one of you provide a lot of great information, our staff as well, including our municipalities and even our neighbors, for example, with CSRD, have provided me with kind of all the information, knowledge and details. And I'm simply that liaison, but I appreciate the comment.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for CEO Hildebrandt? Director Stamer?
Thank Madam Chair. And also on that, Mr. Hildebrandt, are we going to be able to get a specific wildfire review presented to the public in this board? Or are we just going to get a video every day or every year? Like what is the what is the, I mean, the task force and the wildfire review is separate, so in as much as providing the information, so what is the BC Wildfire Service planning on doing once this is all taken care of and they're gonna be trying to get the information to the public?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not aware of any specific review or anything that's going to be, I don't know for a fact that that's going to happen, but we haven't discussed it either. But I do know that BC Wildfire Service is making some significant changes with a lot of the ways they operate. And those are the things we're working through right now. So a lot of that information will start to be coming out in the very near future. And as I mentioned, I'm very impressed with us being heard, and some of the changes going forward, I think will be significant.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we are going to move along to item 12.1.2 Heffley Creek Access Road License of Occupation Renewal. We do have a recommendation. Director Laird, moved by, seconded by Director Rain. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair, to staff. Why wouldn't we be looking at trying to make this into a public road? Why do we have to keep getting a license of occupation every 10 years for this? Can we get an explanation as to if we've got that many users on this road, why wouldn't we just make it a public road?
All right. Thank you for the question through the chair. I'll attempt to answer that question. Because we don't have the ability to make it into a public road. That would be the province taking it on as a public road. So that request hasn't been made. We initially entered into this license occupation, and so we're just extending it. We haven't had that discussion or made that request to the province to make it a public road.
So would it be appropriate for us to ask that question?
Yeah, we through the chair, we could ask that question. I mean, it is a dead end road that really is just servicing our needs as the regional district for the landfill. Well, I shouldn't say just our needs and the gun club that's at the end of the road. So we haven't explored it. We could take that back and look into if there's any appetite and what that process is, because I don't know the answer to that.
Any further questions or comments? On the question then, all those in favor? Directors Hamer, Jackson, and Lepso?
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Anyone opposed? That is carried. Item number 12.1.3 zoning bylaw number 2400 commercial rentable units. This is for information only. This is in response to something that Director Stamer brought forward. Anyone have any questions or comments on Mr. Krause's report? Director Stamer.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks very much to staff for putting this together in such a expedient timeframe, Mr. Krause. I really do appreciate it. Where would we, if we were going to be looking at either changing the bylaws or developing the bylaws, where would we have those opportunities to do that? Are we talking council of the whole? Are we talking, a better in-depth look at being able to review this report and see, if there's an appetite for us to be looking at any changes? Where would we have that opportunity?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, we can certainly talk about that at a committee of the whole meeting, because I think if we do proceed, some of the direction we'll need is what size do we want to set? And each size that you set will have a different consequence for the existing resorts that are out there. So finding that magic number, I think, will be a difficult one. So I'd rather not have that be something that staff simply come up with, start consulting on. So I think if this is a direction the board wants to go, then committee of the whole is probably an appropriate place to start.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So unless I'm completely misreading this, unless or until someone approaches staff and asks for this to be on the agenda of a committee of the whole meeting, then this is for our information and edification at this point only, correct? Thank you. Director Stamer and then Director Rain.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. So yeah, that's what I would really like the opportunity to look into this a little further with discussion with all the board and be able to discuss with staff the ramifications, not only in the amount of time that it would take if we had to go to the next step and start looking at limiting the sizes, and also in the report, I mean, it's very extensive when it starts talking about limiting what's already pre-existing, but part of the issue is what brought this up in the first place is that a lot of the pre-existing is changing without our okay. In other words, they're not following a bylaw, or they're not significantly following what was presented to us. There's no mechanism in place to be able to, somebody in good faith can say they're going to do one thing and then they turn around and do something totally different. So I don't know if we need a motion now to at least bring it to council of the whole to have a discussion, or I'm not sure what the process is, Madam Chair.
Mr. Corporate Officer?
Thank you, Chair. If the board wanted to basically ensure that it comes forward with some degree of rapidity, then it would be entirely proper to move a motion to instruct staff to put this report on an agenda on an upcoming agenda for the Committee of the Whole. Or alternatively, this could be discussed with directors and the chair of the committee, who normally sets the agenda in consultation with staff. So it really depends on the degree of urgency that you want to assign to it.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we at least bring it to council of the whole and we can discuss it as a whole. In other words, have the opportunity to get into it further.
Second by Director Rain. Thank you very much. Discussion. So this will come forward to Committee of the Whole. Director Rain.
On the experience in Sun Peaks, the conflict between residential recreation use and commercial use is going to get much more complex over the coming years. And there is a realistic conflict. If you own a property on the lake that's been your family recreational site, and then all of a sudden a monster house gets built and then they start renting on a short-term basis, you're going to have conflicts. So I think it is better to try and address this early as opposed to waiting.
Thank you. Director Sarai, and then Director Middleton and Director Getz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to the mover of the motion, Director Stamer. Are we looking at people that are not following the bylaws when they're building or they're redoing their properties? Are we looking to limit sizes that we feel aren't, we're getting into a place where we're going to limit sizes of recreation properties?
If I may, I think part of the issue when you look at what Mr. Kraus has brought into the report is there's a lot of different zonings and a lot of different usages throughout the TNRD. And some of the ones that are occurring as Director Rain has alluded to, is that it can be zoned for a specific purpose. And that's how everything is revolved around it, including the taxation of that property. And then all of a sudden that can totally change without any change in zoning or anything else, or even having a proper development plan, because there's no way for us to be able to even enforce it in the first place. When you start talking about, power and septic and all those kinds of things, that's totally outside of the purview of the TNRD. We don't control any of that. So basically what I was trying to get at is looking at all of the properties as the staff has given us a very detailed report on, because there's a lot of different usages and there's a lot of different things that are occurring within the TNRD. I would just like to be part of the process as we move forward and not just have a developer come along and totally change everything right upside down, because we don't have the necessary tools to be able to make sure that it's done properly in the first place, or at least have the public consultation and what they would like us to do. We've seen in other developments throughout the regional district, some close to home for myself, where there's been a lot of conflict between the existing property owners, homeowners, and some of the development that has occurred. And it's been lawful, but it has not been through the intent of the original proposal in the first place. So I think it warrants at least a conversation with staff and the board to get into this a little bit more, because, I mean, we could sit here for a long time as council could try to, or staff could try to detail exactly what they found, because it's not really that easy to get through until they can fully explain it.
Director Middleton.
Thank you. When I was reading through the report and whatnot, is this intended that we would just try and sort of dial back, shall we say, some of the development in what are areas that are designated as resorts as opposed to individual owned properties? That would be the intent of this, correct?
Again, and we're talking more on the commercial side of things. That's exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Yep, Mr. Kraus, did you have something you wanted to say to a point that's been raised?
Yes, thank you. Just like to help clarify. And all those things are true. What we're seeing, maybe I'll take a step back. There's about 23,000 parcels in the TNRD. Of that, there's about 200 and change that are zoned for resort. Within that resort zoning, you have different tenure. So sometimes you have individual owners who own their unit within a shared resort. Sometimes it's the historic mom and pop resort where it's one property owner who has 10, 12, 20 cabins, and they rent those out on a nightly basis. Those are the only places in the TNRD that we allow nightly or short-term rental. On all the rural residential lots, we do not. And so ironically, that is the place where it should be happening. There isn't a ton of land that's pre-zoned for this use that's sitting vacant. There are some existing resorts that could expand, and they could expand without size limits, as was noted. But it's not as if this could pop up just anywhere. If there is a rezoning, let's say somebody finds some property, a developer finds property on a lake that's zoned rural right now, and they want to do a new resort, they'd have to go through a rezoning process. And I think that's where the board can really capture the input of the public and really narrow down on a site-specific basis what the limit should be, limiting density. Right now, the zoning allows 30 units per hectare. Well, on a property that's 80 hectares, that's a tremendous amount of rentable units. So you can limit that, and you can also limit the size of units on a case-by-case basis. I think staff's concern is if we go down this road and we start applying a one-size-fits-all, I think we're going to find a lot of, frankly, world-class resorts here in the TNRD that are suddenly going to be hampered by a size limitation. So I agree, if this needs to be discussed, it needs to be discussed thoroughly to go over all of those kind of things. And frankly, just staff's perspective here, so far we can't really find a problem that needs a solution. Now, I agree it's our job as planners to get ahead of things, not be reactive. But at this stage, it feels like we have a number of other zoning changes that we need to do, some of them that are mandated by provincial government right now, other things that we'd like to add that aren't mandated, but I think would be a good idea, like detached secondary suites, things that our department's looking at right now. Those might be a higher priority, but that's just staff's opinion.
Okay, right now I have Directors Getz, Thorpe, Vice Chair Smith, and Director O'Reilly. Just remember, we are debating the motion to bring this up at a committee of the whole meeting. This is not the place for a fulsome discussion of the question itself. We have that to look forward to at a committee of the whole meeting if this motion passes. So we have Director Getz. All right. Here's where I throw in my obligatory. I am not trying to stifle discussion or debate, simply
Okay, I'll be
trying not to get Corporate Officer Lois angry with me.
I'll be real quick. Does Minister Cologne's new short-term rental laws affect this at all, or will it?
No, because these are the zones that allow it. Yep.
Director Thorpe.
Okay, mine's quick too. looking at our strategic plan, how does this fit in with our strategic plan? And secondly, time commitment and costs for staff if we go down this road, putting into the committee of the whole.
Through the chair, excellent questions. I think where it fits on the strategic plan is probably a question for the board as well. I mean, we have a section on long-range planning. Tomorrow's committee of the whole, we'll be speaking to that. We're hoping to get some board direction on doing some actual long-range planning, working on an official community plan, or maybe even two if we get board's direction. We even have provincial funding to do some of that. This project, how long will it take? I mean, I think first step would be to talk, if we want to proceed, would be to go to a committee of the whole to find out a little bit more about what exactly the problem is that we're trying to solve. Then we can know the scope of, is this one quick bylaw change? Is this years of consultation with resort groups? Like, how far do we have to go? I don't have the answer to that today.
Thank you, Vice Chair Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I was a little bit hesitant to support having even a board report on this, so I'm going to vote against the motion because I don't think this is coming generally from the public. From the report that I read, I don't think there's pressure to do this, and I don't understand why we'd be doing it. So I'm good with just not. And I don't have a clear vision of why either. So thank you.
Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the very last page of the report sort of put my mind at ease, hearing what some of the concerns were from Director Stamer when we initially went forward with this. But specifically, it's saying that these aren't common new resorts, and if a new resort development application is being contemplated and there's concern about a development with no limits, staff can recommend density and rentable unit GFA limits on a case-by-case basis based on public input. So I sort of think that kind of covers it's sort of that safety net, which is almost what we do anyways at public hearings, or we listen to the residents in the area. And so rather than making large changes, that to me covers it. So on a case-by-case basis, I guess through the staff, how would that get back to us when we hear that there's concerns before a public hearing? Because often things come to us in a public hearing once staff have already kind of got an idea of the general tone, and we can't make changes at a public hearing to what's being presented. So I'm just wondering if that flow through and flow of information and how that's received.
Yes, through the chair. So certainly you can make changes after the public hearing, and I think that's important. We can make it more restrictive. You can't make it less restrictive without a new public hearing. But I do appreciate, is there a way to catch this earlier? I mean, for one thing, after having this discussion, I think staff are now quite cognizant of the fact that if we get a new resort rezoning, we're going to have to be very mindful of these potential concerns. And the other parts that are missing here is, through a referral process, we might get input. We're still trying to set up an advisory planning commission. I think that's an important sounding board as well, where we'd start to hear from the local community about concerns with density. But again, through that process, and even after a public hearing, if we hear that there's concerns that the proposed density is too much or the units are going to be too big, it's totally okay to send the developer back to the drawing board after that time, or add more restrictions or add covenants. And that's how it's been done in the past.
Thank you. And just to clarify, it wasn't that they can't change after, it's that we can't make suggestions at a public hearing as a board, what we want to see changed in a plan. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, you would hear the input, public hearing would close, you would consider third,
Right.
and then you would say, we don't want to give third until we see these things done. The developer can come back, depending on what has changed, may or may not need the public hearing, but that's totally the healthy process.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Director Stamer?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And just as a reminder too, in the past, we've had significant issues with TUPs, extension of such. We've had contravention of our existing zoning and bylaws on use, and that's not even in the commercial side of things. And that's why I'd like to be able to delve into this just a little bit more. Not only would we have, like you said, with an advisory planning committee, but we'd have the opportunity to see exactly where everything is aligned, where everything fits, and where we could have some potential issues coming forward. Again, you know, if the developer knew that if they were going to redevelop that property within the scope, that yes, they'd like to tear everything down and they want to put a bunch of houses up, but we also would like them to put in a new boat launch because that's part of the process in our development plan, because we realize there's not enough access on the lake in the first place, then there isn't any surprises. Because right now, we could say, well, yeah, we'll let you rezone for density, but we'd like you to put in a boat launch, and they'd be like, oh, wait a second, that was never part of the process. It's not part of the zoning, so you can't go ahead and force us to do it. That's just an example. Am I wrong, Mr. Kraus?
Through the chair, I can't say that you're wrong, but no, you can't make existing resorts put things in after the fact. I agree with that. But even if the board puts a cap on size, you know, that developer might be coming in for variances after. That doesn't mean you're going to get the boat launch. It just means you're dragging them through more processes. Nothing wrong with that, but that is the consequence of it. So can you do that? Absolutely. I think the question is, should you do it? And that's the decision of the board, of course.
Okay, thank you. Just to, oh, CEO Hildebrand.
Sorry, just one more point for consideration is that, so we typically have 6 committee of the holes in a year. It's usually every second month. We kind of have placeholders already for the next number of months. So I need to understand, based on what the board's decision is, and if this motion moves forward, what's the expectation around timing? Because we're going to have to move other things as well. So just from a priority standpoint, please consider that when you make a decision.
So the decision, the motion on the floor is that we bring a discussion on this issue to a committee of the whole meeting. That has been moved and seconded. There is no specificity regarding which committee of the whole or what any kind of time frame is. This would simply get it on the list of things to eventually make their way to a committee of the whole as it stands at the moment. So on the motion, this is a unweighted corporate vote. Correct? So one hand, one vote. So on the motion, which is to refer this to an upcoming committee of the whole meeting, all those in favor? All right, we have directors Morris, Middleton, Grenier, Hayward, Blackwell, Rain, Stamer, Houghton. Online, Director Hamer Jackson, are you yay or nay on this?
Yay.
Yay, all right, thank you very much. And Director Lepso?
I am nay.
You're nay, all right. So did I miss anyone on the yay side? All those opposed, please raise your hands. All right, we have Director Lepso has said that he was opposed. We have Director Stanky, O'Reilly, Onslow, Hall, Smith, Laird, O'Connor, Getz, Vice Chair Smith, Director Sarai, Bass, Newstater, Thorpe, Sow. I'm sorry, Dallas, I've forgotten your last name. Brandt, Alternate Director Brandt, and Chair Roden opposed. Did we get all that? Because everyone's put their hand down, so I hope, yes. Confounded by math.
Your worship, the motion failed and you read out all the people's names, so we will definitely go back to the recording and grab those afterwards for confirmation, and that'll of course be in the minutes of the next meeting for your adoption. But the minority was in favor and the fairly substantial majority was against.
Thank you very much. Item 12.1.4, Economic Development Function, and Mr. Vieira would like to speak to this first.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, Board. I just wanted to provide a very brief background on this report. I know it's a bit of a long convoluted recommendation. Just the background to this report is it relates to the economic development function that is specific to each electoral area, meaning that taxation was collected from each electoral area to fund economic development specifically within that electoral area. If you're interested on sort of more of a history about the economic development function in the TNRD as a whole, I provided a link in this report to the committee report that gives more of a background over kind of the 30-year history of the ebbs and flows of that service, but not going to get into that today. But the reason that this money is being reallocated is that the recommendations of the electoral area directors is that in most areas to end the line item in the budget that was known as economic development, because there was no clear direction on how to actually utilize those funds. And so the electoral area directors also then gave individual recommendations for their electoral area of what to do with the unallocated funding. And for the most part, that unallocated funding was carry forward from previous year's taxation. So no taxation, there's no new taxation budgeted from any electoral area, with the exception of area A and B, which I'll speak to in a minute. All the funds in those other 8 electoral areas was collected in previous taxation. So the reason this decision is going to the board is that this is actually amending the provisional budget, and these updated recommendations if adopted by the board will be in the new final budget. Electoral area A and B have existing economic development functions that are administered by TNRD staff, and that's why they're to continue, and there still is taxation being collected in those areas. I will leave it at that. If there's any further questions or comments, confusion from the report, happy to take questions.
So the very lengthy recommendation, yes. I think this is a record. So we have the motion moved by Director Laird, seconded by Director Thorpe. Discussion. All right, no hands. Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So when we talk about reallocation into discretionary funds, and the directors are able to use that money in their electoral things, is there a criteria on where that money can be spent? If it was originally set up for economic development, is there a criteria on how that money is dispersed?
Thank you, and through the chair, very good question. So the answer is yes, we have a discretionary fund policy of how that funding is administered. We did not have any policy around economic development, those economic development funds. So this allows us to fall within that policy. Related to that, the Electoral Area Director Committee this morning, we had a lengthy discussion, and they provided input to staff, because we will be preparing an update, a new discretionary fund policy to go to the policy committee in March that will go to this board following that committee meeting. So yes, there is a policy around discretionary funds, and it will be updated. It's expected to be updated this year.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Director O'Reilly?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question through to staff. In the report in the background, and I don't know enough about ECDEV in RDs, but it states in here, the TNRD has struggled with region-wide economic development in the past, which led to the evolution of this function being out to EAs. Is this unique to our RD, or is this just a problem with all RDs? Like I'm trying to understand the landscape outside of the TNRD, and are we maybe just not doing a good job at it? Or should we? I don't know. I'm just trying to wrap, or is it just a dog's breakfast and it's a little bit of everything?
Thanks for the question through the chair. I think generalizing all RDs may be difficult because really it depends on the size of the RD. And if you want to look at that previous report, I gave a bit of a history, but the challenge, to put it put it briefly, the challenge has been the regional district is very large and very diverse. So how do you make everyone around this table happy with how that funding is allocated towards economic development? Because at the end of the day, it is targeted to certain aspects of economic development in certain regions. And that has been the ongoing struggle, which ultimately led to kind of this EA specific function and everyone going their separate ways about a decade ago.
Thank you.
CEO Hildebrand?
And just to add to that, if I may, I agree with what Jamie said. Also, I think the direction from the board back in the day was we have economic development groups and organizations all over our regional district that we're counting on for the delivery of those services. And I think that was another reason why is let the experts do it versus us doing a startup.
Any further discussion? On the question then, all those in favor? Director Hamer-Jackson? Director Lepso?
Yay.
Thank you. All those opposed? That is carried. Item 12.1.5, future of Lytton Library Building and Site. We do have a recommendation. Moved by Director Bass, seconded by Director Newstader. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this, Director Thorpe?
Okay, I feel this is a tough one. I feel we are putting the cart before the horse with this recommendation. I spoke with Judy Moore briefly about the Lytton Library. We still need to determine what sort of library we wish to put back in the Lytton community based on community input, on usage, looking at if returning a library to the community is viable, as well as the ever-changing dynamics of public libraries. I understand the reluctance of the TNRD to take on the physical rebuild of a Lytton building, a library building, and believe that potential lease space is an excellent alternative. Sometimes, in order to best serve all TNRD residents, we as a board need to have an uncomfortable discussion. Unfortunately, this is one of those times. First of all, the village has been given and promised tens of millions of dollars by both the provincial and federal government to rebuild municipal buildings. Therefore, I believe that rather than give the village all the insurance proceeds, a fair division of the insurance proceeds should be considered based on the percentage of the building the village was leasing to own, less the 5 years of payments remaining at the time of the fire. The village has, I understand, bought land for proposed municipal complex site and is looking at a feasibility study in around the $31 million range. If, however, they wish to proceed with the TNRD owned land within the village at Main and 4th, then I think they should be given the opportunity to purchase the site, you know, as first consideration. Secondly, how many years will it take the village municipal building to potentially be rebuilt to house a proposed library? Would exploring other potential lease sites, once determined what sort of library we wish to see in the community, be more expedient for our residents? And lastly, and this is the one I struggle with as I'm wading into waters, but given TNRD's interest in this property, I think this is the really uncomfortable part of the conversation. Is the village of Lytton viable? Given that it has been widely discussed how the village was barely able to function financially prior to the fire, as well as the current decreased tax base, how will the village be able to carry on once the province steps back? While the village has been promised government funding to rebuild, will they be able to cover the costs of day-to-day operations? Are we hitching our cart to a dying pony? These are concerns and conversations that are taking place behind closed doors. And I think the time has come where we all need to address these issues head on, openly and pragmatically.
Thank you very much, Director Thorpe. I think this has gone outside the agenda issue or the item on the agenda that we're being asked to vote on, which is to start negotiations. I believe personally that the recommendation is broadly enough worded that it can encompass any number of negotiations, any number of possible dispositions of the former building. The library question is one that certainly will be asked. The TNRL has shown itself to be very nimble and very good at thinking outside the box. I know that they have statistics and figures for residents of Lytton and the surrounding area and what uses they made of the library. And I am confident that they will be able to come up with the best possible solution for the village of Lytton. And it may look nothing like anything that we currently have right now. But that is all a discussion for another day. This needs to be done, the motion in front of you, because we need to make a decision by May of this year. But as I said, I believe the recommendation is broadly enough worded that we can have any number of discussions within that regarding some very difficult questions. And so I had Director Stamer, I see Director O'Connor, Director Laird, Director Sarai. Director Stamer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question to staff. I'm just reading the report, and a couple of questions that came to mind was, what is the insurable value that we had on behalf of the TNRD on that building? And the second thing I just wanted to make sure, and I asked a question before, when we're looking at the original lease, with the understanding that it was going to be a rent to purchase, is that in fact what was agreed upon?
So through the chair to Director Stamer, the offer from the insurance company, which needs to be resolved one way or another by the end of May, is that either they would provide us with a payout of $1.5 million, or else that they would pay for the reconstruction of a building. And so that's the decision that needs to be made by the end of May this year. The rent-to-own arrangement, since 2016, the TNRD owned the building and was leasing it to the village of Lytton, or leasing a portion of it to the village of Lytton, with a explicit understanding that the two parties would work towards a joint ownership structure in the future as the village made rent payments on the space in the building.
Thanks, Madam Chair. No, I'm just trying to look strictly at the math. And I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, we all have operating agreements in our municipalities, in our areas, and I'm just trying to figure out, what the original worth was, what the future worth is, and just trying to figure out how it was equitable at the time at $13,000 a year times 20 years is $250,000. And now we're talking $1.5 million. And again, I'm not asking for the town of Lytton to turn up and cough up the difference, but I'm just trying to get some clarity on how that agreement was supposed to continue forward in that situation. That's all. And if is it co-ownership, or is it a purchase, is it a rent to purchase? I just wanted to, find out exactly what it said in that agreement.
You, Director O'Connor.
Thank you. I can assure all of the board members here that we have made no decisions, the Village of Lytton Council, as to what we're going to be doing. You're correct. This is just one look at a possibility. I don't know where 31 million amount has come from, because I have never heard that. And it's never been discussed at our council. We have received money from federal grant for rebuilding what they're calling accessible, open public buildings. So things like museum, visitor center, possibly library, that kind of thing, not for a village office. And so, we're looking at all sorts of options for that. But yeah, I can assure you that we have made no decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Laird. Director Sarai.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just question the staff. If we look at this proposal and then we have to go back and maybe lease some land or some space back 600 square feet of lease space for community library. Are we also going to be looking at expense to put a fire hall back in Lytton? And is this something we can look back at and partner up with? I'm just curious there.
CO Hill. Sorry, I said to Director Sarai that the Village of Lytton was responsible for the Lytton Fire Department. It was not a TNRD fire department. No, it's okay. It's easy to lose track of who's looks after what. Director O'Reilly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not too many comments about the subject in general, but I just wonder, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable in the sense that this seems more like it should be a closed conversation in general, and I just administratively, if we're talking about land and leases and how we want to position ourselves, this should, to me, would have been something that should be held in closed, but that's just my thoughts on it.
CO Hildebrand.
Thank you. Just for, I guess, a bit of background, unfortunately, we all realized that we couldn't get to that fifth-year term where we could actually sit down and negotiate with the village to kind of bring this to a conclusion, because that's really the part now that we're dealing with. I know our corporate officer wrote this report and made it very vague on purpose, because we got confirmation or information from the village that they have passed the motion that they would like to start negotiating with us, and we needed to follow up with our board to find out if that could happen. And the way we've written it is in a way that we can start that. And when decisions need to be made, of course, we would certainly move into close, but really what we're asking the board of now is pretty wide open. There's things that could happen. There's things that will happen. It's just, we don't know what those are. And we need the flexibility to start that conversation and of course, bring everything back to the board for a final decision.
Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's just a question around timelines. When you read that the insurance company is wanting to have this finalized by the end of May, I don't think, unless we start discussions now, we won't even know where we're going. So I think it's important that we start on the discussion process, that it'll be coming back to the board on what it comes out of the discussion. Is that not correct? And then the board would make a decision.
If I may, I remember back a year ago where this date was actually to have this done by January 1st by this previous few weeks ago. And now it sounds like it's maybe been extended to May. So I don't think we're going to get any more runway past that. So we need to firm up what our plan is going forward. And this is just giving us the ability to start those conversations and figure out what that path might look like.
Director Getz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a mayor of a community that's still rebuilding, you have to move forward on these, as sometimes it takes years for things to happen. So you have to move forward, even if you have a lot of ends that are left loose, because everything is a slow journey here. It takes time to do just about everything and anything. With Merit, we're finally now getting some response from DMAF almost 3 years in, and we've been planning. So I'm going to support this so at least the movement can start happening, because it takes time for this to happen.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Director Stamer.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just looking at the recommendation, and as staff is alluding to it, it's pretty vague. In as much as that it's saying that, you know, we can try to get this thing moving forward as quickly as we can, but sometimes it's kind of hard to make these decisions when we don't have all the legal ramifications of what we're trying to accomplish here. When it says here that basically we're moving forward with the idea that we will be turning over our interest in the property. Is that true from staff? Is that really what you're asking us to do?
No. CEO Hildebrand.
Yeah, when I'm reading the recommendation, that's really all we're asking the board to decide on. And the board instructs staff to negotiate with the Village of Lytton regarding disposition of the former library location. That's it. There's like, until we get into the details and understanding of, we want to come back with options to the board and alternatives, and then let the board make the decision or piece this together as they see fit. So we just need you just need to give us the green light to start that, given that this is a board decision.
Yeah, thanks for that, but it's still not entire. I mean, I'm going to be voting in favor of this because I want this process to go forward. But the way it's written, it's basically saying that we're going to be relinquishing our rights to the building and everything else that's included without having a full explanation of exactly what that entails and what future ownership or things that transpire, or even from a legal side of things. So, I mean, I'm all in favor of at least getting us to the next step, absolutely. But the way the motion is set, it says that it's basically we're making a motion on disposing of what we have. Is that not true?
No, that's not correct. It's regarding disposition. Disposition could go either way. It could be that we retain it. It could be that we sell it.
Okay.
It's so no, it is, I described it to someone as wonderfully vague.
It's wide,
So
completely wide open.
you'll be voting on wonderfully vague, for lack of a better term. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Director Grenier?
Thank you, Chair, and I am wonderfully vague on this issue. If nothing is agreed upon by the 24th, do we at least have the option to take, I think, $1.5 million and then figure it out later? Is that the idea?
By May 24th?
Yeah, May 24th. So is the default, if we don't have an agreement that's been discussed and, you know, private meetings, closed meetings, whatever, probably our default's to take the $1.5 million and talk it out later.
That's correct, but we
Thank-
wanted to get started much sooner than that
Right.
versus starting on May 24th.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? On the motion then, all those in favor? Director Hamer-Jackson?
Yay.
Director Lepso?
Yay.
Thank you. All those opposed, if anyone. Director Thorpe? Anyone else opposed? Then that is carried. Move on to 12.1.7, which has been withdrawn. This will come back to the next meeting with the supporting documents. Unfortunately, due to an error in the system, I am told they did not attach, and we felt it would be better for people to have the opportunity to read the supporting documents at their leisure. We have a report from the Accessibility Advisory Committee, not from the Policy and Governance Committee, as it says within the body of the draft minutes itself. Does anyone have any questions about the minutes from the last Accessibility Committee meeting? No? We have the Committee of the Whole meeting from December 15th, and we do have a recommendation arising from that.
Move
So-
the recommendation.
Second.
Vice Chair Smith makes a motion, seconded by Director Stamer. Is there any discussion? All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We have several items of correspondence for information and edification. Does anyone have any comments or questions on any of those items for information? We also have item 14.2, which you were sent. It was a letter from the Equality Project in Cache Creek requesting their support. However, if you read the report and the supporting documentation, which I'm sure you all did, support for what is somewhat unclear. They have offered to appear as a delegation, so I would like to make a motion that we invite representatives from the Equality Project to appear as a delegation at a future meeting. Director Newstader seconds that. Thank you. Are there any questions? On the motion then, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We move on to new business, and I know that Director Thorpe has a piece of new business, and that is in the form of a letter, which hard copies of which were distributed just before this meeting. And I am going to pause. I would ask you not to please use this as a bathroom break. That's coming up. But please take 2 minutes if you have not already. I'll give everyone an opportunity to read Director Thorpe's letter. Please do not leave the room. Has everyone had a chance to read the letter? All right. Director Thorpe, do you have, you'd like to discuss this, or you would like to tell us what it is you'd like us to vote on?
Yes, please. Thank you. First of all, as somebody may have pointed out, I buried the lead. The last paragraph talks about what I'm asking for, which is essentially $50,000 from the province to help finish the cleanup of one property within the TNRD. As most of you know, Lytton was given tens of millions of dollars for the cleanup after the fire. It didn't matter whether you were insured or not. Unfortunately, those properties within the TNRD that bordered the village of Lytton were not given the same funding. There was a $30,000 cap Red Cross charity donation, not tens of millions of dollars. So most of the people within the TNRD directly outside the village have managed to do their own cleanup. There is one property that still requires about $50,000. I had originally thought that it was just a question of geographics, that the province didn't understand that these properties were part of the community. It wasn't until about a week and a half ago, I had a conversation with somebody that told me basically it boiled down to where you pay your taxes. If you pay your taxes to the municipality, you were covered. Insured or not, they covered everything. But if you bordered on that on the village, in other words, you were on the other side of that magical line, you didn't get any of the provincial funding, which has created this division in a community that's already suffering. We're looking at $50,000 for one property to finish so that they're shovel ready. And that's what I'm asking, is that the board support this letter requesting $50,000 to finish the cleanup for a property called Jade Springs. Jade Springs had been in the community for a very, very long time. That was the Jade Springs restaurant that everybody knows about. That was the Jade Springs grocery store, which we lovingly referred to as Kenmart, because you could go in there and you could get anything you wanted. That was the campground that brought in tourism. It employed people. It brought in economic development. It doesn't exist anymore. The person that owned that property, he had terminal cancer just before the fire. So I think that a few things fell through the cracks because he was ill, one of them being the insurance piece. But 60% of the village wasn't insured either. Anyway, his family is struggling to try and get this property ready to rebuild. He has a son that lives in Edmonton. He has a daughter that lives at the coast that is caring for his wife who has limited English. The daughter at the coast has 2 children that she's working with as well. I think that we need to look at some equity and to help our people, not just those in the village, but all of those in the community of Lytton, because that fire hit the entire community, not just the village. Anyway, I'm looking for support for $50,000, please, and thank you.
So, Director Grenier? Okay, so the motion is, just to be clear, that the TNRD send a letter to
Emergency management with a copy to Parliamentary Secretary Raleigh Russell, who is Rural Development, asking for this $50,000, please.
All right, and you're planning on restructuring the letter to put the ask, as it were, at the beginning?
Let's bury the lead. Let's put it up at the top. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Director Thorpe has made that motion. Director Grenier has seconded it. So discussion. Director O'Connor, Director Getz, Director Bass, Director Hall. Director O'Connor?
Thank you. I'm in full support of advocating for funding for cleanup of properties. But I'm concerned a bit about some of this letter. The village of Lytton has not received amounts of money for none of the residents of the village of Lytton received any finances from the province. The money went to the village. And so what I would see is if this was a request, that it would go then to the TNRD to support this cleanup. the funds that came in from municipal affairs and from EMCR were for, to get our municipality back. So the cleanup of the properties was really to help with that infrastructure rebuild. So none of the money came directly to residents. So I think that's an important piece. It says here, apparent unlimited aid to the municipal. So it's not unlimited. We have to account for every cent that we are spending. In fact, we have to even, apply for that money that we're spending. So it's not as simple of just that money is not in our bank account. And I think that's an important understanding. If there is 30,000 available through Red Cross, does that mean that they are short 20,000? I guess that's a question I would have as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so no, they have gotten the Red Cross funding, but it is not enough. It is not enough to finish it. They actually need probably 33,000 to clean up, but the contingency's been built in for a little bit extra, so it's under 50,000 that they would require. And I know that we're splitting hairs, but every single property in the municipality has been made shovel ready. If it wasn't directly cash given to those properties, they have received a great deal of aid that hasn't been extended to anybody outside the municipality. And I know it's choice of words, but I think we need to be really clear on that fact.
Okay, we'll move on to Director Getz.
Just a question. Was DFA ever applied for Disaster Funding Authority?
They don't qualify for DFA because it was a wildfire. DFA covers flood. It does not cover wildfire because wildfire is seen as an insurable event. The provincial government, not to bash the provincial government, but they haven't yet seen that insurance is often either prohibitive or unattainable for those that live in rural communities. If you live in a municipality and you have fire protection, it is much easier to get fire insurance and substantially cheaper than it is if you're in a regional area.
Okay, so then my next question would be, has disaster mitigation adaptation, the federal government, been questioned on their ability to supply funds for this? That's what they're there for.
No, what I can tell you is that when I was first elected, there is funds that was given solely to those within the village boundaries. That was through Pacifican, that was there for the commercial rebuild and for the residential rebuild if you were building to net zero. When I first approached Pacifican about having the properties surrounding the village included, they told me to go to Red Cross. It took me 6 months to get Minister Sejan's office on board. And then it was probably a year after they had announced it, because they announced it in June of 22. It took me to almost June of 23 for them to include a 15-kilometer radius around the village for those properties impacted. It has been a struggle because it seems as if federal and provincial don't understand the geography of the area.
So just so people are aware that when you're applying for these funds, you have to have both federal and provincial buy-in. In order to get DMAF, DFA, and now, just so you're aware as well, EMCR no longer looks after this portfolio. It's now Waterlands and Natural Resources. So your letter probably should go to Nathan Cullen because EMCR no longer looks after this. We've made the change. So in order for the feds to pay out, the province has to be involved, and in order for the province to pay out, the feds have to be involved. It's quite an ugly situation. But maybe we should talk a little bit more after this because DFA is basically for anyone that was underinsured to bring them up, whether it's fire, wind, whatever.
I've been given a flat out no.
Well, and
It-
that's why we took ours to the ombudsman. The ombudsman made a ruling on that there was unfair DFA situations, probably something that should be read as well, his decision. I would, if I was any of one of these people, I'd be going to the ombudsman to make sure that the people are following what his recommendations to DFA was. Because we've had some changes in our area because the ombudsman report found that some of the DFA payouts were unfair or not, and people were rejected for unclear reasons. So I just want to let you know that Nathan Cullen would be the guy you want to talk to now.
It was a week and a half ago that I was speaking with the EMCR and they were quite specific
Okay.
that it was them. So that's where, and the fact that Raleigh Russell has been designated to Lytton, that's where I was going with that.
Director Bass?
Thanks. I thought Director Hall was next. Just a procedural thing here. Do we do this? Is this setting any sort of precedent at all? I mean, I don't recall us ever being asked to do anything quite like this. So I just want to know if this is following any, if this is going to set a precedent or cause any issues, should we vote for it?
Mr. Corporate Officer?
Welcome to the
Chair.
PRD, Greg.
That's quite the head scratcher. On one level, the local government, in this case, the regional district, does take positions on issues, and there are a number of issues on which you will have resolved to lobby other levels of government. And in addition, there are many reasons that can result in this board choosing to write letters for various reasons, normally letters of support, occasionally letters of opposition to things. I don't think there's a intrinsically procedural problem with writing a letter with these contents. The question would be more a political one if you would be concerned about if you would be then expected to write similar letters in the future, and if so, whether or not you felt you could justify this as being different from others, or what impact you expected it to have.
Oh, thanks, Corporate Officer. The whole concept of setting a precedent is what's concerning me. And whether if we do this, we're setting a precedent that other regional districts, I'm thinking Columbia, Shuswap, might be forced to follow as well.
Thank you. I have Directors Hall, Middleton, Hamer, Jackson, and Blackwell. Director Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also had concerns about setting precedents as well, because it just seems like, as much as we want to maybe look at a letter of support, I just have a hard time looking at, an ask for 50K when I also see that 15 TNRD to properties managed to struggle to clean up their own properties. And now we've got this one property that has a quite compelling story, I might add. But I mean, all of a sudden you're giving preference to that one property over 14 other properties. Do you start pitting property against property? And that's a concern. Okay, so I have a hard time supporting this because they've been given, as it says here, because of the invisible line, a charity fund of 30,000 per property. I think there's other means of trying to find funding than just sending a letter of support saying, hey, give us $50,000 and let's give it to that one property. I just don't think that's our position.
Thank you, Director Middleton. Director Sow, I've added your name to the list.
I was pretty much going to just ask Dale same question and add in what Kelly has just already reiterated. So again, I can't support this. I don't think this is the right direction to take. And I don't think sending a letter, just asking the government to send somebody $50,000 is going to net a dime. So I wouldn't vote in favor of this.
Director Hamer Jackson.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, same fire, why is that district not being treated the same way as the village of Lytton? So I'm wondering, and again, the other 14 properties, maybe the letter could read to the same gratitude as the village of Lytton and the area, the elected area, where the same fire was, if the letter could kind of be directed at not just $50,000, but why did the other 14 properties, have to spend their own money? Like, and if you were in the village of Lytton, you didn't have to. So I'm just wondering if there's any appetite to change that to extend it to the same area that was that was affected by the same fire. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Director Hamer Jackson. Director Thorpe, did you have?
That's a tricky one for me because I'm one of those the other 14 properties. So I have to be very careful how I word that so that there is no conflict of interest. Most of us have managed to do what we had to do. I agree. I have been preaching same fire, same day forever and the same community, but it doesn't seem to be heard. Now we have one property left that needs help. And I'm suggesting that EMCR take care of that property. But yeah, that's why it doesn't say all those properties, because I had to be very, very careful as I'm one of those properties.
Thank you. Mr. Vieira, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, and my apologies, I wasn't, I didn't have a chance to review the letter prior to this meeting or knew it was coming up, but I think with this discussion going on, I need to provide some background of what the TNRD program was that's being referred to that was funded through the Red Cross. So if you allow me maybe a few minutes to explain our program for benefit of the board. So following in 2021, through our EOC, we recognized the issue of requiring assistance for this debris management. So we had discussion with the EMCR about that. And over the coming months, a program formed where there was funding through both Red Cross and EMCR, two separate funding streams, for the TNRD to administer a program to support private property owners in their cleanup. So we developed a program within the confines of the funding agreements, both from EMCR and Red Cross. We advertised that, and that was available to all impacted residents. Some residents had already cleaned up because admittedly the program didn't launch or be advertised until probably 4 months after the fires. There was about 40 or so properties throughout the TNRD that took advantage of this. There was a cap of $30,000 per property through the Red Cross, and there was funding through EMCR that covered specific costs associated with transport of the debris offsite and disposal fees of the debris, as well as archaeological work. So everyone who applied to the TNRD to be part of that program received support through this program within the limitations that we had with the funding. There was exceptions made for this specific property that allowed us to go over the amount that was originally approved. So we had to get an amendment from Red Cross actually that increased it to that $30,000. So as it stands now, that property, just to be clear, the cleanup costs associated with that property that was funded through both EMCR, the province, and Red Cross is $125,000. The amount of work that we could do through this program was complete. The program ended, and then we received feedback from the property's owners that they wanted additional work done. I would agree with Director Thorpe that there is still work that could be done to make it shovel ready for a new project. That is not the level of cleanup that happened at any of the other properties. So the attention and basically the service that was received by this property through this program was the same as the other TNRD properties. I can't speak to comparing that to how the Village of Lytton did it, but I think it's important for the board to understand that the attention and work done on this property within the confines of the program was the same as other properties that applied for and took advantage of this program.
Thank you. Director Blackwell.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would have no problem with this letter if it was talking about advocating for change of policy and enforcing that. It comes down to specifying, it comes down to specifying one business. And if we were doing this directly, and we were the funding body, we would be providing a benefit to one individual business over others. So yeah, if this can be changed to can we change this policy? I think that eliminates some of the precedent trap that this might cause with other areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Blackwell. I'll just say that that was my thought as well, that rather than have it benefiting one specific property, we would be better perhaps using our collective voice to advocate in terms of greater fairness for all people affected within regional districts by these disasters on the same day and same time and same place as a tragedy befalls a municipality, to ensure that there is equity for everyone.
I'd be more than happy to say, yes, let's change it to that.
Okay, well, I've got Directors Sao and Grenier here. So Director Sao, go ahead.
In light of the change to the letter, but I will say that, you know, as an EA director, putting myself in the same shoes, if it happened to one of my residents, I would be writing the same message. You know, the powers that be may very well say no, but it's a start to just get attention. But the other thing I want to be clear on, you know, we're aiming to support Area I, but I just want to make sure the letter and any effort that we make doesn't hamper Linton either. Maybe Director O'Connor, if you would give some comments or feedback on that.
Yes, thank you. You know, the province is a partner with the Village of Lytton, and, you know, I don't want to see anything happen that could change that. I just want to touch on a comment that Trish made about one community. And absolutely, before I got into this role as mayor, I saw Lytton as one large community, and socially we are. But there are political lines, right? There are boundaries with municipality, regional district, First Nation, and there are rules to follow and things that are out of our control. The province has been quite clear to us that the money that they have provided for the village is for the village. Saying that, our recovery managers have been working with a number of property owners outside the village, including this property, on possible leads on some of the things that they could be doing in support. So, but thank you for that. Yeah.
Director Grenier.
Thank you, Chair. And I was going to ask you, Denise, other than the way the letter's been written, you support, I think, from what you said, the idea of equity, that people all get recovered. So I'm just wondering if, hearing what you've said, if this could be reworked in a way that took out the offensive stuff, that went to the right person, said the general things. Is that something that you would support?
That's why we're having this discussion, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I would suggest that we bring it back with an amended.
Perhaps the cleanest thing would be to defeat the motion and have Director Thorpe craft in conjunction with whoever she wants to work with. With whomever she wants to work with, and bring back a different letter to a future meeting. That would probably be the cleanest way to deal with it. Mr. Corporate Officer, are you nodding or shaking your head? You're nodding. Okay, he goes, that's fine. Awesome. All right, so we do have a motion. On the motion then, all those in favor? Okay, that's fine. Director Hamer Jackson?
To rewrite a letter, right?
No, this is to defeat the one that was proposed, and I understand that a different letter will come to us at a future date.
Yeah.
So you're voting against the motion that was on the floor.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Director Lepso?
I'm the same as the mayor of Kamloops.
Okay, thank you. All those opposed? All right, thank you very much. The motion is defeated, but we can expect to see it come back. Slightly different format. All right, and I understand, Director Grenier, you also had some new business. This is for information only, correct?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just want to update directors. Just before Christmas, we got word from TELUS about plans for the area, Tronquil Valley, Alpine Valley, Red Lake, the same place that we had written a letter about the Tronquil Creek, Chris Creek Road. And the good news was that they were discontinuing copper wire telephone service to the area. And they were going to be doing it, and they are doing it by March 6th. That's naturally caused quite a bit of concern in the area. There's, according to TELUS, there's 55 to 57 households that will have their combination microwave copper telephone line disconnected. And TELUS has offered those residents $1,400 to help offset the cost to switch to a satellite service. And they propose ExploreNet or Starlink. And the combination of those internet satellite services plus what's called a VoIP phone, voice over internet protocol phone, or a cell phone that uses Wi-Fi. But that would mean that that cell phone would only work in the house where that internet was. Starlink's $156.80 a month. The TELUS copper wire was $20 to $30 a month. I have been in contact with our two MLAs, Todd Stone, Peter Millibar, been in touch with our MP, Frank Caputo. And I want to say that on the 15th of January, we had a call with TELUS, CAO Hildebrand and Jamie Vieira and Trish Thorpe as well, to explore what was going on. The gist of it is that copper, our what's called plain old telephone system, POTS, is going the way of the dodo. That's happening North America wide, not just in this valley. But the three alternatives, which is fiber or a cellular link or satellite, those are the places where things are migrating to. And I think Mr. Vieira said quite clearly on the call, gee, if you're telling people that they ought to go to satellite and not expect pure fiber and not expect cellular, why don't you just come out and say that? Perhaps this is happening in this community. They say that there's 3 communities that this is happening in so far. I want to report that the community association has canvassed its members. Many of the people in this valley have already made the switch to internet because they want the benefit that things come with satellite. So you've got part of the community that has already migrated to it, is quite happy to take the $1,400 to offset the cost that they've already incurred, and they already have cell phones. Here's the problem. I spoke to a gentleman, he's 82 years old, spoke to him yesterday morning when he was snowed in. You know, he's not moving anytime in the next couple of days out of his place. He's 82 years old. He says, Mike, he says, I pay 20 to 30 bucks a month. And he's under the impression that he's going to have to pay $170 a month at some point. And I don't know about this technology, and I don't know what's going on here, and so on and so forth. So we got a generational issue. We got a cost issue. So let me tell you what I'm trying to do. I appeal to TELUS to look again at the cellular option. Is there any way we can get a cell tower up in the Red Lake Alpine area so that at least the cost could come down and the simple focus on telephone might be available to these people, quite apart from having some kind of cellular service for wildfires, for emergency response. I mean, it's 60 kilometers all the way to the end of the road. So you got somebody that's got a problem or wants to report a fire. We're kind of out of luck unless you're sitting in that house with your cell phone or your VoIP phone. So TELUS has said that they would go back and look at it. I know that MP Caputo said that he would be quite prepared to support any initiatives with the CRTC if they could help fund a cell tower. And the reason I want to bring it to your attention is I know that there's other areas in the TNRD that are having this difficulty providing internet and also providing cellular communication. And I'll keep you apprised of where TELUS goes and what Mr. Caputo does and what the CRTC does. But I think we have to be alive as a regional district about this issue. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Director Grenier? Director Stamer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just to add to what Director Grenier has said, you know, I'm a little bit disappointed that both our main providers, TELUS and Rogers, asked us for a letter of support just as soon as last year to help them in additional funding. And then they're turning around and trying to reduce services wherever they can. From what I understand, even in our valley, and Mayor Blackwell can probably back me up on this, that we're gonna have a serious provider problem through MassCon. And they're trying to get away with pretty much everything they can get away with. Our cell tower and barrier has not been looked at since the fire of 2003. There was talk when the Trans Mountain Pipeline was put in, as we're all aware, there was it was in confidence, and then they told us about all these potential Rogers sites that were going to be available throughout the North Thompson Valley to not only improve the cell service on the highway, but also to bring in more competition. From what we understand, that is not going ahead. And I think that as a board, the next time one of these cell providers wants support from us, I'm not going to be providing any support whatsoever, because they're just trying to get away from their responsibilities. And I sympathize with Director Grenier, because we're having the same situation where we are.
Thank you, Director Sal.
Thank you. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna be in touch with Director Grenier. We have the same problem with Upper Clearwater as well in the Wells Gray Park. Traditionally, they tell us has blamed Director Blackwell knows well, blaming lack of cooperation or allowance to put up cell towers within the BC Parks land. But I have met with Minister Haven, and he has said, no, just put in the park use permit and we can go ahead with that. So it seems like TELUS is playing dumb on all sides so. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sura, and then Director Blackwell.
Thank you. I'll just keep it short. So I'm just wondering, is staff working with you to reach out to these providers to say, look, the board is concerned? I remember when I first heard of this, we did have a presentation. They were going to fill the gaps where there was no cell service, and they wanted that letter of support. Can we, putting forward, can we as a board tell staff to see what that letter actually wanted in support, and maybe call them out on it and say, look, you know, we stepped up when you needed our support, and here we got some gaps in our regional district. Can you give us some answers? What's happening here?
I can take that one. I know that we're in constant contact with both the large carriers for sure. And the response that we typically get is their focus is on the lowest, the areas of most need, I guess, which this would be potentially one of them now that this is changing. But they're also strapped by the funding they're receiving and the projects they're proposing. So we will follow up. So I don't think we need a motion. I can take that away, and I can follow up with both Rogers and with TELUS again, just to kind of reemphasize the whole goal back in the day was supporting them to help us solve these gaps, not create them.
Yes.
And CEO, just on that, and I remember reading it or hearing it just recently, probably in the last 6 months, where our premier was saying that it is one of his mandates to make sure that there's cell service throughout all the communities, small and large. I think it was presented at SILGA, so that not only do we have cell service for senior citizens, but we also have cell service for our students and our children to be the ability to learn and have that Wi-Fi system. So I think it's just not on the cell service providers. The government has also mandated them to provide services to every corner of our province.
And Director Blackwell.
Yeah, this issue, it doesn't just end at the municipal ballot or start at the municipal boundaries. There's been a practice with federal grants for quite some time to do last mile fiber to homes along highway corridors. But that ends in the municipal boundary, and we can't seem to crack open fiber in our towns. Specific to Director Zhao's comment, the Upper Clearwater Valley has been now without phone service since last Thursday. Oh, excuse me, because the copper wire cracks. And I had a request, an urgent help me from a citizen that used to be an employee of mine up there, is to contact TELUS/MassCon, which I did at the beginning of this meeting. And I am hoping to get a response by today, but I doubt it. But yeah, this is to the point of ridiculous. I've also had conversations about the state of TELUS and Mascon, and apparently there is significant internal restructuring going on right now. And when I asked specifically about projects for improvements in the Clearwater area inside and outside of our boundaries in the next 2 years, there is nothing solid on the horizon at all. And I was given the impression that I shouldn't hope for anything. So we're really being underserved by these companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Director Stamen.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I'll just keep it short. Is there a possibility that we could have a quick little discussion about this tomorrow at our COW meeting? Because, you know, we just had a report from staff about our emergency preparedness and our 911 upgrades. You know, maybe we should be having a collective effort, pushing the government back and say, look, you know, how are we supposed to move forward and having proper emergency preparedness for the residents in our regional district without an increase in cell tower coverage? I think that was brought to us in that proposal, and maybe we can spend a little bit of time, a few minutes on it tomorrow, and just see if we can figure out exactly what we can do going forward. Maybe it should be an election issue. I don't know, but we certainly got to do something a whole lot different than what we're doing right now.
That's certainly possible. The board can bring that up under new business perhaps tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other new business? Director Otten.
Keep it short and sweet. I just want to put a thank you out to the Pritchard Fire Department. Tuesday evening, they responded to a building fire just about a kilometer up the road from where the new Monty Creek Fire Hall is going to go. And they had quite a drive getting there in the snow, but they were able to save the gentleman's house. He lost his barn, and another outbuilding was able to save his farm animals. But it's funny, it just happened just about a kilometer up from where the new Monty Creek Fire Hall. And I just want to put a big shout out to the volunteers for Tuesday evening's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? All right, we move on to notice of motion, and we have the notice of motion presented by Director Thorpe. This was announced at our last meeting on December 14th. Now we are at the stage where it needs to be moved and seconded. And if that happens, then it can be discussed on its merits and we decide whether to approve or defeat the motion. But first, there does need to be a motion moved and seconded if we are to have a discussion on this. Director Thorpe makes the motion, Director Getz seconds. All right, so the motion would be that the board instruct staff to prepare a report on potential impacts of the Merritt Flood Mitigation Plan to properties downstream and the potential need for a TNRD flood mitigation plan. CAO Hildebrand, I believe you wanted to speak to this.
Thank you. I also had a discussion with Director Thorpe about this, so I will certainly let her speak for herself. But just from a basic knowledge standpoint, streams, rivers, lakes are the jurisdiction of the province, fully the provincial jurisdiction. We have no control whatsoever as a regional district. This would be a provincial responsibility. We would need to hire a consultant or some type of expert to actually write this report as it's being requested, because we don't have the in-house capacity or knowledge or capability to actually know that. And I think it would be just duplicate work, because the province is already responsible for making sure the upstream and downstream effects of any changes in the city of Merritt are proper. So that was my feedback to Director Thorpe, but certainly would allow her to share her thoughts.
Director Thorpe?
Okay, well, this is actually twofold. One is figuring out what Merritt is doing and how it will impact. Even if it is only to reassure those residents downstream, not just our TNRD residents, but also our First Nation neighbors. The other thing that it is, like I say, two-part, is the potential need for a TNRD flood mitigation plan downstream from Merritt, which I also think is highly important. I've had a number of residents reach out and they have concerns. And I think that we need to address our residents' concerns.
Just as a quick response, I think the second part of that, the TNRD emergencies response mitigation plan, is certainly in our purview, something that we probably are already working on, we'll continue to work on. So we can certainly take that one on. It's just telling the province and the city of Merritt how to build those changes and somehow be involved in that doesn't seem like our jurisdiction.
Mr. Vieira?
Yeah.
Then I have Director Bass.
If I can add to what CEO Hildebrand said, so another thing to kind of a point of clarity, any work that Merit would be undertaking in the river would require a Section 11, and that's the permit to do work in stream. And as part of that requirement, that Merit, as part of the work Merit was doing, they would have to have a review of any downstream impacts. So that would be reviewing any immediate downstream impacts of any work they were doing. So that's already part of the process. So that would be a requirement on Merit if they're going to do any work. And that would be any immediate impacts that are kind of directly downstream. I guess maybe thinking about further downstream, sort of long-term, like there's kind of two different things here. Those immediate impacts would be dealt with through Merit's work. Flood mitigation strategy, as CEO Hildebrand said, would be a completely different mechanism that we'd have to look at.
So sorry, just to put this in its most basic form, if we were to ask for a report on potential impacts of the Merit Flood Mitigation Plan, we would be duplicating work that would already be being done because of the Merit Flood Mitigation Plan.
Correct. The Merit's flood mitigation plan should include downstream potential impacts as part of the requirement that the province would put on Merit.
So for the residents, wherever they happen to live downstream of Merit, who are concerned that something undertaken by the city of Merit might adversely affect them or their properties, how would they be advised to keep informed about what is happening with Merit and what's being done to mitigate those effects downstream? How would they keep themselves apprised of what's going on if they are concerned? Because there's only so much hand-holding we can do, and people do have to take some responsibility.
I would think that we could work closely with Merit through our communications team and Merit's communications team to make sure that we're sharing those messages. I think that would be the best way to do it, to make sure that we're posting things on our social media and on our feeds as well, and providing information to the board publicly would be great. It's just different than what this notice of motion is. So we're kind of moving to a different direction.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, the province would have a role in this as well, because the province would be approving any of that work. And so if there is going to be downstream impacts, then the province is the one who's making the decision whether to approve that or not. So they have to be part of that process. We're not approving the work the Merit's doing. Merit is not approving it, province is.
Director Getz.
Just so we're clear on this, we don't do a Section 11 past city limits. Simply don't have to. We're not going to. What we're concerned about here, and some of the calls that I have received, are people are concerned because we're going to be building our dikes to Q200 level. We have the river has changed. There's a straighter line now. The water is going to go through quicker. So if you have done any flood work, you know that if you remove a problem from your area, it's going to affect somebody else downstream. It's just the way it goes. Some of the people that are downstream are concerned the fact that they own the property. They do want to updo their dikes, but they don't know what their legal ramifications are. The minute we start touching a dike, we have to have federal and provincial fisheries involved. We have to have cultural monitors all the way through the whole thing. Anybody that's downstream goes ahead and starts to do their diking without any kind of guidance will be fined or probably have to take the dike down because it hasn't been covered. So what I think we are looking for here is just the residents downstream probably need a little bit of education from TNRD on what to do if they need to shore up their dikes, because some of them need to do it. But the city of Merit will not be handing out that information. What I can do is I can bring our ROC director here to give a 10-minute explanation on what we're doing with this whole deal, with our application to DMAF, and show you what we're doing and what it's covering. But we will not be looking after properties out of our city limits. It's just simply not going to happen. So our Section 11s will be happening within the city of Merit, not anywhere else. The province is involved with the flood mitigation, but also the federal government has to be involved as well. So there's several different groups that have to be involved in it. But I think, for myself, the only reason we're doing this is because some people have said, Merit, you're going to do all this work. Are you even concerned about us? And yes, I am. As a mayor of Merit, I am concerned because I have relatives that live down the valley. So I'm concerned. I know that in some areas, a lot of the riverbed has widened, but a lot of it has changed. So I think it's just the fact that as a group and of people who look after citizens, we have to cover every aspect. And Merit is concerned that if we cause any problems downstream, we would like to let people know downstream that we would like to help them out some way we can. But I don't think they know what their legal responsibilities are. And I'm not sure that's up to TNRD. And like, Madam Chair, you said it's not, there's only so much handholding you can do. You're correct. But some people are completely unaware of what they can do. And that's really not up to the city of Merritt to educate them in that process. So right now, for me, this was the ability to bring some concerns forward that people have called me and TNRD. And that's why I jointly did this with Director Thorpe.
Question for clarification. Has the Merit flood mitigation plan been finalized?
It's been finalized and sent off to DMAF as July 2nd of this year. Now, has it been accepted? We don't know yet because DMAF has not got a hold of us. Now, the province has given us funding for 3 dikes, 129, 130, 131. So they've already approved those dikes and funded it. So I'm assuming those were approved. So is the whole thing approved, all 14 kilometers? No. It's in process now. Will it be approved? We're figuring with a 165-page application, there's not much that was missed. The province has been very involved in it, but it's not 100% approved, no.
And just a clarification as well, when you say Merit, obviously is going to do a section 11 within its own municipal boundaries, but not outside. Does that mean that someone who lives 5 miles outside the boundaries, no one has any idea how these plans will affect their property? That is not looked at. I'm simply asking because I have no familiarity with this process whatsoever.
And I'll be honest with you, the people that have phoned me have no familiarity either. I just know that we are working and our focus is on the city of Merritt. We don't focus on the lands before or the lands after. Now, if any of you have taken a drive down the Coquihalla from the toll booths down, you can see all of the work that has been done by the province, and they've done everything up to Q200. But it hasn't happened past Merritt. So, and I think that was for protection of the Coquihalla Highway because the bridges are all being put back in again. So the next time you take a drive, have a look and see how the dikes have all been redone. And that's what the city of Merritt dikes will look like. But we do not worry about, I shouldn't say worry about, we have no inclination before or after. We're just focusing on fixing the dikes within the city limits is what we're after.
Thank you. And Director, I do see your head, but Mr. Vieira, so when you talk about upstream and downstream of the affected areas, so whose responsibility is it to look and see what impact what the city of Merritt does is going to have on people upstream and downstream of the city of Merritt's boundaries?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, and to clarify, what Director Getz said is correct. So they aren't required to do a Section 11 outside their boundaries. My understanding is though, as part of the Section 11 requirement is that consideration needs to be given of what the impact downstream will be. So the Section 11 within Merritt's boundaries will have include consideration of downstream impacts.
Chair Roden, if I may, just as a suggestion, in the final comment or where it be resolved, could it be that staff actually reach out to the province for more information and have them come and explain this? Because ultimately they're the approving body and none of us really know what they're going to approve or if and when they're going to approve it. So perhaps that might be a way to bring that information back so we can actually have a better idea of what we're expected to do.
Okay,
It's
thanks.
just a suggestion. I don't get a vote, just wanted to share it.
All right. So Director Thorpe, what do you think of that? Getting someone from the province to come and speak with us about these potential before I'm simply speaking for myself. I'm concerned about the expense and time of commissioning a report that might end up duplicating work that someone else has already doing.
I have some additional information, if I may, that I just got received from text. We have a representative from the province who is coming in the February meeting who could speak to this. It's already scheduled as a delegation.
Okay, perfect. What I could do then, or change the motion, was that we have that discussion with the province first, and then see whether we need to look at implementing a flood mitigation, a TNRD flood mitigation plan downstream. But we could just wait and see once we've had that conversation with the province. I guess we could table it.
I don't think, tabling is where things go to die, is it not?
Oh, I don't want dead.
Sorry. I think we would want to defer this or discussion of this until after we have heard the provincial presentation.
Can we defer this notice of motion till after we've heard the provincial presentation?
Okay, we do have a motion on the floor, so do we need to just withdraw the
Chair,
motion?
I think it would be easiest to move the deferral to a point in the future after the TNID have had these discussions with the province, and then we would bring the notice of motion back on a future meeting after those have taken place.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be withdrawn. We can simply defer it at this point.
I would, yes, but specifically, I would recommend that it be moved, seconded, and voted upon to defer it to a future meeting.
Okay. So Director Thorpe, would you like to move that we defer consideration of this notice of motion until such time as we have heard from the province?
Oops, exactly that.
Okay.
As long
And-
as it comes back.
Okay,
because
and
I do have
seconded by
concerned
Director
residents.
Blackwell. Any further discussion? Director Laird, I know you did have your hand up, so I'm sorry.
The Nicola River runs through a quite large portion of area. It's M&M. I actually had one property owner that I met and talked to about his diking. It's a very long process. You have to get a section 11, and part of this section 11, you have to show that your dike is not affecting anybody upstream and it's not affecting anybody downstream. Because when you deflect water, it does have a certain pattern it follows, but after it goes so far down, the pattern goes back to the original. So the dike that you put in will only affect so far downstream, and then it goes back into its regular stream bed. And that's what they went through, and it's a very expensive process. It does save you property.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Director Blackwell.
Yeah, just quickly a suggestion, perhaps. I know the Fraser Basin Council has done studies on stuff like this and flood mapping up our way with LiDAR, et cetera. Is there a partner for that area, or is Fraser Basin Fraser Basin Council somebody that does work in that area? I am not sure of that. I don't know. So
I believe the Fraser Basin Council was doing some work on the Nicola watershed. Director Getz.
And if the board so wishes, I can have our ROC director come and give a 10-minute what we've done, where we're going, what it looks like, what our application looks like. He's available at any point in time, so just give me the nod if you'd like it, and I can make arrangements for him to be here.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion, questions, comments? All those in favor? Director Lepso?
Yay.
Director Hamer Jackson?
Yay, I don't know if you can hear me or not. Yay.
Yep, thank you. All those opposed? None opposed, that is carried. And Director Grenier, you're going to read us an announcement of a notice of motion. This is simply to hear it for the first time. It will come back to us at the next meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to introduce this notice of motion and the accompanying materials as per what we heard yesterday about procedure. And it reads as follows. Whereas BC CPI increases in 2023 and 2024 were 2.8% and 6.9% respectively, and TNRD constituents are contending with substantial household increases to fund mortgages, rent, utilities, and groceries. Whereas TNRD electoral areas incurred an average 2023 budget increase of 6.3% and a projected average 2024 provisional increase of 8.4%. Whereas a significant portion of the $2.7 million TNRD Development Services operating reserve are the accumulation of surpluses from previous electoral area constituent tax requisitions. The board requests staff apply $575,000 of accumulated development services reserves to the electoral area 2024 provisional budget, thereby reducing the 2024 provisional tax increase in the 10 electoral areas from 8.4% to 3%.
Thank you. Are there any other notices of motion? No, question period. We're all going to look at the single person in the gallery and make her feel very uncomfortable. No? Okay. Okay. That's one way to do it. All right, closed meeting.
Second.
I do need to read it out officially. Yes, thank you. I've learned my lesson. It's one of my resolutions for 2024. That a closed meeting take place following the regular board meeting in accordance with Community Charter, Section 91C, Labor Relations or Other Employee Relations. Director Stamer, I believe, moved that. Who seconded it? Director Bass? All those in favor? Director Lepso and Hamer Jackson, are you in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you. All right, we will be moving into a closed meeting.
You'll make sure they get them.
Yes.